Okay, I'm going to call the March meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee of the Washington County Quorum Court to order. I have asked J.P. Usry to lead us in the prayer and pledge this evening, so.
Lord, we are grateful for all that you've done, and we thank you for this night. We ask that you just give us great wisdom as we go through the needs of the county, and we thank you for that. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, J.P. Usry. I appreciate it. Are there any changes to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved.
I have a motion to adopt the agenda by J.P. Johnson, a second by J.P. Duncan. All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion has been adopted, or the agenda has been adopted, excuse me. All right. Monthly reports. First up, Treasurer Hill.
Get right into it, 4.1. February is not a banner month for revenue, as you'll see in the general and road. The expenditures came up over revenues. Look down at 3017 jail, just opposite the revenue, 1.8, 1.3 going out. So still a good, healthy balance in most all of our accounts right now. If you look at 3046, the rescue plan, 477,000 went out. That went to Spirit Architecture and election software and premium pay. Let's see, the bottom of the end of this report, we began the month with 87.4, ended the month with 87.5 million in the bank. 4.2, 1 cent sales tax. This is December numbers, so this is the Christmas month, of course. Usually one of our bigger months, and this month was no exception. 856,000 came in. That's almost 4% over the same period last year. 4.3, the quarter-cent jail tax, up 16%. So very good this month, and just through the first 2 months, we're already at 385,000 above where we were this time last year. See the local distribution of the taxes. Most every category went up, as has been the case for about 2 years now. But you have to think with rising prices across the board, the war in Ukraine and everything else, we'll start seeing at least a dip in consumer confidence and spending. And these numbers may start to level off or go down. But of course, I thought that when the pandemic hit and it just went crazy. So, but with the rise in prices, I can't see us sustaining that. But we just have to wait and see. The half-cent road tax, 23% increase. 192,000 came in for the month of February. And that is all I have.
J.P. Duncan.
Just looking back at the 1 cent sales tax, 4.2, as we look at months coming up, so May of 21, we brought in $912,000. I was just curious, that was the highest month we've had, looks like, at least printed on history here. Do you know what drove that? And
Stimulus checks.
And so we're going to be lapping
They came out that March of 2021, and we wouldn't see that until May. So,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
J.P. Usry.
Thank you. I just have a question about the gas tax. Is that a percentage of the what we pay, or is that a percentage, or is that a per gallon tax?
That's the state sales tax is 6.5%, and 1/2 of that percent is this road tax. It's not based on, I mean, there's a big formula. Once they collect all the money, there's a formula, but it's based on It's not based on like a fuel tax. It's a actual statewide sales tax.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Treasurer Hill? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Employee insurance report. Mr. Angel, how are you, sir?
Doing well, how are you?
Good.
A little less exciting of a night than last we were here, but that one ended well. So I'd like to draw your attention, as usual, to the employee insurance fund sheet. Our cash flow, as I told you before, is usually running about a month behind because we usually don't have a chance to get all the details into that. So you'll see that cash flow report, as usual, is 1 month behind, but the employee insurance fund sheet is up to date. So the overall numbers, we began the reserve account at $3.478 million and ended at $3.472 million. So grand total, we were down in the reserve account $5,187, which, $5,000 is a lot of money, but when we're dealing on a percentages basis with $3.4 million, we would consider this month pretty much a push. You give or take $5,000 any month, and you're hitting right about what you'd expect to hit. The one discrepancy I want to point out for you all is in the insurance contribution from the county, and you'll also see it in the life insurance contribution from the county. You'll notice in February, both of those numbers are approximately half of what they were in the previous month. So as you may recall, we took over in January doing these, but that's always a little scary when you see double numbers 1 month and half the other on the contribution side. So we were able to do a quick audit of last year's books, and what we found is there was no contribution made last November. So those are the January initial dollars are additional dollars, are catch-up dollars that really were from November of 2021. We've spoken with Human Resources, and the Comptroller's Office is aware of this as well. We'll try to figure out why those relate and give that information back to you all as well. But the most important part here is we're made whole. We're back to where we should be. There are other things in here, but it's all fairly minute. Everything looks as it should be. One thing I wanted to ask this board was, are there certain things you would like to see from us? So we're more than happy to come in and report these things, but what I would hate for us to do is not give you things that you want each month. So if there is anything that you would like us to look further into, please let us know, and we'll make sure to have that prepared for you on a monthly basis.
Thank you, sir. Questions for Mr. Angel? We appreciate you.
Thank you all.
Comptroller's report. Comptroller Worthen.
Six point one is summary of statement of operations, expenses by fund and department. And on average, we should be at about 17% after 2 months, and general fund is at 14.1%. And all the other detail is there in your packet. And then the overall for all the funds is 13.4%. And then 6.2 is unappropriated reserve balance report. And there's one correction on here that I didn't notice till this afternoon, but the 3046, the American Rescue Plan Fund, I had included that anticipated revenue, but Bobby had already put it in his revenue forecast. So that American Rescue Plan Fund should have a unappropriated reserve balance of $21,600,000 instead of the $44,800,000. So, and then overall the general fund, the net general fund is at $13,800,000. And that's all I had.
Questions for Comptroller Worthen? Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
You bet.
Okay, with that, we'll move into the unfinished business portion of our agenda. We have item number 7, an ordinance appropriating $256,000 from the American Rescue Plan Fund Act to the pass-through payments line item in the 2021 American Rescue Plan Act budget for the Homestead Subdivision. Sorry, key your mic again, J.P. Wilson. J.P. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have not been able to observe enough support for this to move forward, so I move that it be tabled.
Would that be tabled to a date certain, or are we tabling this indefinitely?
Tabled indefinitely.
I have a motion to table indefinitely by J.P. Wilson, a second by J.P. Duncan. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 7 is tabled indefinitely. Item number 8, an ordinance appropriating $61,784.63 from the unappropriated reserves of the general fund to various line items in the Circuit Court 4 budget for 2022. I believe we do have Judge Beaumont here to speak to this, and I would like to invite her up here and give us some background on this.
So this is an ordinance. UAMS applied for a grant for our drug court program to help with children of our participants, because oftentimes they have experienced a lot of stress, trauma. A lot of our participants don't get their kids regular checkups and the proper medical care, and a lot of them don't have insurance. And so this grant was going to provide for medical care for them, as well as mental health care. And in order to do that, they put in a position for another case manager for drug court. The way that the ordinance is done is kind of weird, because we currently have one case manager for drug court, and they wanted our case manager to be able to work on this grant also, and not have a second case manager just be on this grant and only be able to deal with the children. It just made more sense for both case managers to be able to do anything and everything. And so the way they did it was, in the grant, they have it set out for the $61,784.63. But the way that'll be split up is that half of that will pay for our current case manager's salary, and then half of it will pay for the new case manager's salary. So the county will still be paying for one case manager position. It'll just be split between the two different case managers. So there will be no added expense for the county. Based on our numbers right now, it would be very beneficial. Also, the way that this was written up, we have it set for a 5-year period, which is the how long the grant is supposed to last. So we're not asking the county to continue the second case manager position after the 5-year grant ends. Did that make any sense whatsoever at all?
Oh, I don't know. J.P. Johnson.
I think we're getting closer, but do I understand correctly that at some point we're going to get grant money that we will transfer into this account? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. So just like any other position that we currently have under a grant, we send a bill to UAMS, and then they pay us that amount. So that way there's no cost to the county. Okay, good. Clear as mud.
J.P. Duncan.
So the way I read it, it sounded like we were on the hook for half of the salary, but it's actually, you're saying it will be fully reimbursed. There's no cost to the county.
Yes. So the way we did it was they're gonna pay half of my current case manager position, and they're gonna pay half of this new case manager position. So whereas the county right now is paying for one full case manager for drug court, you're gonna pay two halves. So it ends up being the equivalent.
Okay, thank you.
I guess my question, and I think that's confusion of probably us on the court, is why are we taking this money out of the unappropriated reserves? Does anybody, I'm confused on that.
Now that's,
I would have assumed if we're splitting the current position we have, it would have already been in your budget and we would just move the money within your budget.
well, one position is in my budget,
Right.
okay?
But we're taking that position essentially and splitting it, right? That money.
Correct.
So I'm still confused about why it's coming out of the unappropriated reserves, I guess.
Well, there's still a full 61,784.63, which is needed, which is what the grant will be paying, the
Okay.
new grant.
Okay. I think I'm on the page now.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that. JP Johnson?
So is it logical when the grant money gets here, the grant goes into the unappropriated reserve account? If we've already funded the two positions, we funded one in the budget, we're funding one out of the unappropriated reserves. When the grant money gets here, it goes to unappropriated reserves? Am I correct?
I'm not sure about that. Treasurer Hill or Chief of Staff Lester, do you have knowledge on that?
I think this is, it's gonna be reimbursed, I'm assuming. So, I mean, the county's gotta pay for it first.
Right. We're essentially fronting the money, and then we're going to be reimbursed for it.
You're seeing it,
Coming out of
it
them.
looks like it's coming out of the.
Right. And I think JP Johnson's question is why at that point can the reimbursement not go back into unappropriated reserves? Chief of Staff Lester, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that it will, because what you'll notice is when we get money reimbursed in, you then have to go back and appropriate that into a budget. So just because money comes in from a grant doesn't necessarily mean that it goes to a particular place. Only the quorum court can appropriate that. And so when this money comes in, it'll come, if there is a request that it be appropriated somewhere, it would come back to you for that appropriation.
Thank you, sir. JP Simons?
I don't want to assume. Have you checked to make sure this is something that doesn't violate the terms of the grant? Splitting one position as opposed to funding?
No, in actuality, they put it in the grant that it would either go to fund one position or to split to do two positions, so.
Just didn't want to make that assumption that was okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Judge Beaumont? Thank you so much for taking the time tonight and walking us through this.
Thank y'all. Sorry it's so confusing.
Yeah. I will entertain motions by the court. I have a motion to pass the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation by JP Johnson, a second by JP Simons. Any further discussion? Any public comments? All right, we'll take action. I have a motion to pass item 8.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by JP Johnson, second by JP Simons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 9, an ordinance changing the grade of the GIS mapping specialist position in the IT budget and appropriating $57,544.06 from the various funds to various budgets for 2022. Chief of Staff Lester, would you like to speak to this real quick?
So, yeah, we have a GIS position that has been basically, it started out as a very basic entry-level GIS position. We are now wanting to take that and morph that into a higher-level GIS position that with a lot more responsibilities and function, a GIS person that can oversee all the GIS for the county. The county employs several people that do GIS for different areas, and so this position would kind of be the head main GIS position for the county, would oversee the county GIS road program, the 911 GIS mapping, and then any other GIS needs. And, you know, when we talk about GIS, it's all of our mapping for everything we do in the county. And so we are asking to change this to get a more qualified candidate, someone that has a lot more experience and knowledge when it comes to GIS, so that we can adequately fund that position for someone with that knowledge to come in and provide services to us.
Any questions or comments? Do I have a motion? Hit it again, I'm sorry, I messed you up, man. JP Simons.
Sorry, I was slow on the draw. So we've approved this position, but we've not filled it yet, and we're now upgrading that.
That's correct. This position is empty right now, and we have upgraded it. And so we will, if approved, we will then put that back out, post it. And I think there are people around, there are people that have the qualifications that are necessary in this area. So it's not like we're throwing a line out hoping to catch something. And so we'll put that out and hopefully get some applicants that have the requisite educational component and work history.
Do we have anybody internal that might fill that position?
We have somebody we have someone internal, somebody that works for the county that's done this for us, that has this, that does have a lot of knowledge and experience, yes. But
Awesome.
Again, they're in a different position right now.
Sure. Thanks.
Any motions? Questions or comments? JP Duncan?
I move we pass item number 9 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by JP Duncan, a second by JP Ussery. Any further questions or comments? Discussion? Any public comments? All right, we have an item to pass item number 9 of the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by JP Duncan, second by JP Ussery. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 9 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. New business. Item number 10, an ordinance projecting revenues and carryover totaling $7,496,055.79 in the various funds and appropriating expenditures of $7,496,055.79 to various funds and budget line items for 2022. At the close of every year, if we have grant funds that still have balances in them, we need to close those and move them to the new year, and this is what this ordinance does. So any discussion or motions? JP Johnson?
I move we pass it to the quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass to full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by JP Johnson. Second. Second by JP Duncan. Any further discussion? Any public comments? All right, I have a motion to pass item number 10 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by JP Johnson, a second by JP Duncan. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 10 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 11, an ordinance appropriating $88,546.30 from the unappropriated purchase of tasers. If you remember we went through the budget cycle and the Sheriff's Department purchased tasers. And then we had requested that they break that up in 5 installments to help us with some budgetary stuff. Needless to say, due to the world and where we're at right now, that first installment did not get satisfied last year, so this is just reappropriating that first installment into this year's budget so they can make that first installment. I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by JP Wilson. Second. Second by JP Duncan. JP Simons.
Yeah, so will we be making 2 payments this year, or are we just pushing that 5-year time frame out an extra year?
I think the plan is to make 2 payments this year, but I see.
No, he's right. I mean, as far as the payment, it was from last year. So the 12-month time period will start after we make this first payment. So we won't be asking again for this year. It'll be for the next year's budget will be the second installment.
Great. carrying that money. I like it. All right, any further discussion or questions? Any public comments? I have a motion to pass item number 11 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Wilson, second by J.P. Duncan. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 11 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 12, an ordinance appropriating $109,386 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to the vehicles line item in the environmental affairs budget for 2022. Along a similar train of thought, if you remember last year, the Environmental Services Department wanted to purchase a grapple truck, and they did not get that purchase completed last year, so this is reappropriating that money into the current year budget. My understanding is we've purchased the truck. We're now ready to take delivery. Chief of Staff Lester?
That's correct. This money was appropriated, and we put the process in motion early last year. And, you know, we started the budget process, and we were under the assumption that we were going to get this truck before the end of the year. And then end of the year comes, and just like, you know, I think these are things that probably used to be very rare, but given the supply chains and all, it seems like every purchase we make that we expect we're going to get, it's delayed. So, yes, we had already ordered the truck, and it is finally about to be ready for us to pick up and put into service. And so that's why we're asking to reappropriate this money so we can pay for it and take possession.
Great. J.P. Wilson?
I move for approval of this item.
I have a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Wilson. Second by J.P. Usry. Any further discussion? Any public comments? All right, I have a motion to pass item number 12 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Wilson, a second by J.P. Usry. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 12 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 13, an ordinance appropriating $33,020 from the Animal Shelter Special Projects Fund to various line items in the Animal Shelter Special Projects budget for 2022. The Animal Shelter collects donations for special projects, and they would like to use some of that money, and so this is allocating that money between the line items in their budget. Do I have any discussion or motions? J.P. Simons?
I make a motion, we send this to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Second by J.P. Usry. Any further discussion? Any public comments? All right, I have a motion to pass item number 13 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Simons, second by J.P. Usry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Item number 13 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 14, an ordinance appropriating $335,785.55 from the American Rescue Plan Act Fund to the engineering architecture line item in the American Rescue Plan budget for 2022. If you recall, last year we passed both funds for architectural fees for both JDC and the detention center. Those funds were not fully exhausted, and so we still owe money, and we're reappropriating that money for 2022. J.P. Simons? Okay. Any discussion or questions? J.P. Rios Stafford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question, I do have a question. It's really more for the county attorney. It's whether with the final rules for the American Rescue Plan, talked about, they clarified some of the rules after Alabama decided to tried to use a lot of the American Rescue Plan funds for prison expansion. And with the final rules, they clarified that some capital expenditures may not be eligible, for example, constructing new correctional facilities. And I know that we originally appropriated this money under the interim rules, which didn't have that language in there. But now that the final rules are out, have we gotten a legal opinion about the legality of spending this money on correctional facilities?
So this money was appropriated, my understanding is anything that was appropriated, or basically what the Treasury said, it's not an understanding, the Treasury said any money appropriated under the interim final rules will not be held to the same if the rules change under the final rule. So this money would still be held to that standard of the interim final rule. Now, anything that's appropriated now that the final rule has come out would be held to the final rule and not the interim final rule. So this money was appropriated, and then with that, because of our understanding based on the interim final rule, actions were put into place to move forward on these services. Even though some has been paid out of the jail for the jail budget, the juvenile justice building, the architect hasn't sent a bill yet, even though they've been performing work. So I believe that it'll be the interim final rule, and that would be our take on it, would be that it would be held to the standard under the interim final rule.
Okay, so even though this is a reappropriation for 2022, it would still, we understand, be part of the 2021
the
rules.
appropriation
Yeah.
has been made. It's a reappropriation because we have to close the books on 2021.
I see.
So these funds, money just doesn't roll over from year to year.
Okay, all right, thank you.
JP Madison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know that I've ever heard of a reappropriation. I mean, the problem with county budgets is that you close it at the year end, and this seems like a new appropriation. I mean, we can call it whatever we want, but I think we're risking that this is a new appropriation. If we didn't spend the money last year and the budget ended, we're budgeting new money, just like with the piece of equipment for environmental affairs. If it wasn't in the budget, it's a new appropriation. And so I think there's a risk here with that. There's no such thing as reappropriation. I mean, yes, it wasn't spent last year, but when it wasn't spent, it got rolled up into last year's budget and it was over. So that gives me a lot of concern. I don't think calling it a reappropriation changes it. It's a new appropriation. And I think we're under whatever the current Treasury guidelines are. So I think we should exercise caution.
Well, I mean, our options here are to say, okay, we'll just pay for this out of the county general unappropriated reserves, or we do what we did initially, and worst case scenario, the Treasury says, hey, when you reappropriate it, you're under the final rule, and then guess what? It comes out of the unappropriated reserves of the general fund because the work's been started. We can't tell the architect we can't pay them. Hey, sorry, we're not gonna pay you for the services. We've already started that process. So it's not like it's something that hasn't happened that we could put the brakes on.
JP Madison?
Well, actually, every contract we have is subject to quorum court budgeting, so I'm not sure that's correct. But my advice is that if we're gonna proceed with spending this money, that we ought to set aside in reserves from unappropriated reserves, whatever this amount is, in case we have to pay it back. Because it's one thing to say we're going to do it, we're going to spend it wherever the money comes from. But if we're pulling it out of ARPA funds, then we need to set aside that amount in reserve to make sure that if later we have to go back and pay it back, we can. I don't want to get down the road and have the answer be, well, you couldn't spend it that way, and then we didn't set aside the money to spend it. That's my concern. But, I mean, certainly every contract we do is subject to quorum court budgeting. So, I mean, if the quorum court doesn't appropriate the money, we don't appropriate the money. That's just the way it goes.
JP Real Stafford?
Obviously, I'm not on this committee, but if I were, I would bring forward a motion to have the money come out of the general fund instead of the American Rescue Plan Fund, just to be on the safe side.
Well, I mean, I think I can understand Chief of Staff's point that while the money wasn't spent, the contracts were signed and the work was definitely undertaken underneath the understanding of the interim rule. And I think we also must, while we all have our opinions about what the final rule says, it has not been, I don't think, deemed that this would be an inappropriate use of these funds in the final rule. So, I mean, that's the landscape as I see it, but I'll leave it to the pleasure of this committee. JP Johnson.
I move we pass this to the quorum court with a do pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Johnson. Second by J.P. Duncan. J.P. Simons.
Thank you, Chair. Treasurer Hill, what would it look like to hold back this 335 out of unappropriated, kind of reserving that back, taking the course of action,
We would just have to set up
a new fund?
a new fund and put the money in there. It would just sit there till we found out 4 years.
Okay.
J.P. Esri.
Thank you very much. I believe that in a way we already have this because we transferred a substantial amount into the long-term savings for the county. And I think that we could certainly bring money from there if it came right down to it. But again, as stewards of the money for the county, if there's an opportunity, if this will fall under that, and it looks like that probably will, we need to try to do that. And that's what we're trying to do the best we can with the county's money. Thank you.
J.P. Simons.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Lester, we haven't received an invoice for the work done, correct? That's correct. But it's being done. That's correct. We're not in a huge hurry to make this happen. Is there any way for us to consult the Treasury on this very specific issue? Push it till next month? Get some clarification?
So my understanding with all of this is the final rule is unless they have changed their opinion from the last time I heard someone from the Treasury speak, unlike the grants that we typically get where we can get some recommendation, the final rule is it. And so my understanding, again, unless things have changed, is they won't give guidance. They've issued the final rule, they had the interim final rule, and then the final rule, and then that was all the guidance that we were gonna get. And it's kind of up to each individual county to spend and do what they think, interpret that rule the way they think and think it was meant to be interpreted.
Thank you.
J.P. Rio Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one additional piece of information that I wanted to, kind of put out there for consideration. In reading the news articles about Alabama and their prison expansion, which is, the big thing that sort of led to this being put into the final rules, what they are doing now is they are moving ahead with their prison expansion, but they are funding it from their revenue replacement fund that they pulled out of their ARPA funds. So they're not using they're doing it through that separate fund that they pulled out.
Thank you. I have a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Johnson, second by J.P. Duncan. Any further discussion or questions? Any public comments? I have a motion to pass item 14 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Johnson, second by J.P. Duncan. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? No. Item number 14 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 15, an ordinance recognizing additional revenue of $134,118.65 and appropriating $134,118.65 from the unappropriated reserves of the general fund to various line items in the sheriff's budget and jail budget for 2022. As you know, the sheriff's department receives reimbursements or revenue, whichever word you rather, to provide security at special events. This is us recognizing that money coming into the general fund and moving it to the various budgets mentioned. J.P. Duncan.
Move we pass item number 15, the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have an item to pass, item number 15 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan, a second by J.P. Simons. Any further discussion or questions? Any public comments? All right, we have a motion to pass item 15 to the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan, second by J.P. Simons. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 15 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item 16, an ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $19,550 in the Animal Shelter Grant Fund and appropriating $19,550 from the Animal Shelter Grant Fund to the Animal Shelter Grant Fund budget for 2022. The Animal Shelter received a couple of grants from some outside sources. This is us receiving that money and allocating it to the Animal Shelter for their use. J.P. Duncan.
Move passage of item number 16.
I have a motion to pass item number 16 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Second by J.P. Wilson. Any further discussion or questions? Any public comments? I have a motion to pass item number 16 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan, second by J.P. Wilson. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item 16 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item 17, an ordinance appropriating $15,883.80 from the unappropriated reserves of the general fund to various line items in the Veteran Services budget for 2022. Apparently there was some part-time salary money that was inadvertently left out of the budget for 2022 for the Veteran Services. This is appropriating that money. For 2022. Any questions or motions? J.P. Duncan?
I move we pass item number 17 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan, second by J.P. Simons. Any further discussion or questions? J.P. Johnson?
This is another one of those items that makes my head spin. If you go look at the budget, it's the second line item on the budget. There's 4 years' history there. And the number was left blank. And we approved the budget. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people that looked at that, and we assumed it was correct. Like you said, I'm not adamantly opposed to it, but it just shouldn't happen.
Criticism well taken. I think I've been a little disappointed by the erroneous items that we've had to fix the last few months on the whole budget process. Any other discussion or comments? Any public comments? I have a motion to pass item number 17 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan, a second by J.P. Simons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 17 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item 18, an ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $404,265 and appropriating said $404,265 to the various funds, budgets and funds for 2022. The road department had an auction in December, I believe, and this is the revenue from that auction, and this is us accepting that revenue and appropriating it to the road department. Do I have any questions, discussion, or motions? J.P. Essery?
Thank you very much. Could we have a little more definition on what the various line items were? And I guess I'm particularly wondering what other professional services, I'm wondering if you could explain to me where this money went or where it's going.
Chief of Staff Lester?
Well, the money's, the road department sold they had some used equipment and things that they didn't need. And then the Environmental Affairs Office had a grapple truck. It was so there's a new one on the way, and then there's the one they use, and then there was one before that, that they didn't use anymore, and they got, sold it. So splitting those up. The Environmental Affairs gets the $6,600 from the sale of their equipment, and the rest of it goes back into the road department budget. So it just goes back into their budgets. I don't know exactly what they plan to spend them on, but I just know that that was the request they had for where they wanted those monies placed in their budgets.
JP Madison?
I'm curious what we sold and what it was worth and how old it was. I hear a lot of talk about, oh, you know, we sold such and such to so-and-so out at, you know, and I just think it would be good to say what it was that we sold, why we didn't need it, just to sort of have the information out in the public. Because that's, I mean, it's not just, you know, a $5,000 used car. That's $400,000 worth of equipment that presumably taxpayers paid for at some point for more, and then now we've sold it. I'd just like to know that, because, you know, like when we get the county judge's disposal report, there's very strict rules for how we handle county property. Once taxpayers have bought it, we're entitled to know when it's disposed of. So similarly, we have to obviously appropriate the money that comes in when it's sold, but I'd just like to know what it is.
Chief of Staff, do you have any comments on that right now?
Yes, we do. We do that because there's a state law that requires that we do it, and there's a court orders that are filed with the county clerk's office. And so before we can sell any, so there's a difference based upon whether it's considered junk or scrap, or if it's something that has a value of at least, I think, $2,000, I want to say. But in order to sell stuff in an auction, every bit of it has to be appraised by the assessor's office, and they have to give us a written appraisal on it because we cannot sell it for anything less than that. And so there are court orders that are entered that list everything that's sold and actually list the appraisal as well. And then there's a court order that's entered once the sale occurs that shows what each item went for. So that is available. If you'd like a copy, I can make sure we get you one.
Yeah, I mean, I was aware of anytime we sell property, real or personal, whatever it is, we have to have it appraised, and then there's a certain percentage by which the county cannot dip below that. So you're precluding some, you know, sweet sale, right? But I would like that, and I mean, I don't want all of it. If there's a way to simplify it for maybe public consumption, just because that's a lot of money. So it's kind of curious to know how much we put in to know what we're getting out. So that'd be good to have for the quorum court meeting. If you can get that to Myra maybe, and you could share that with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief of Staff. Any further discussion or questions? I believe I still need a motion for this item. Do I have any motions?
So moved.
I have a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan. Second by J.P. Wilson. Any public comments? All right, I have a motion to pass item 18.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan, a second by J.P. Wilson. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That item will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. I would like to make a motion that we include items 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, and 16. I make a motion we place those items onto a consent agenda for the full quorum court. Once again, those are items 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, and 16. So we will exclude items 14, 17, and 18.
Second.
I have a motion to move those items to the consent agenda by the chair, a second by J.P. Duncan. All those in favor? Aye. Those against? Those items will be placed upon the consent agenda. Last item on our agenda is a 12-minute public comment period with a limit of 3 minutes per person. Any public comments? No public comments. This meeting is adjourned.